welcome everyone to the Human Biography podcast. Today, I've got a fascinating human that I've been following for a few years. Dennys, now tell me, I want to ask you something about your work. Can you tell me the first photograph you ever took that you remember?
Wow. The first the first photograph that I ever took, I guess, if you sort of loosely use the word professionally,
Yeah,
um, was when I bought my first camera, my first DSLR camera, and that was like in the very early 2000s, like it would have been 2000 or 2001 or something like that when the Canon 10D came out. And I remember buying the camera from the place that I work, because I used to work in a retail store, which is very much like Best Buy in Australia. And
sure.
I bought that camera from that store, and a friend of mine who's an incredible engineer, recording engineer, like he worked very, very high level, and he was mixing an album for a young emerging artist, and an iconic studio, like recording studio in Melbourne in Australia. And I remember driving from after work from there to the recording studio and unpacking the camera from its box and
Yeah,
putting battery in, and unraveling the memory card and chucking it in there
yeah.
for the first time. And I met this amazing young artist, and I took this picture of him, and he was pretty ostentatious, and he had makeup on. He was like very Clockwork Orangey sort of thing going on, and he just sort of stuck his tongue out at me, like he just went into the camera, and I snapped this
Yeah.
shot. And it's still one of my favorite shots that I've ever
Oh,
taken, and it's literally the first shutter press of my camera. And I've been looking for that shot to post it as a like a an
yeah.
interesting thing, but I sort of shaved down the amount of images of my hard drives that I took with me when I moved to the States. And I have to dig it out from my archives when I go back to Australia for Christmas, and I'll post it soon. But yeah, that was my first shot, was of a recording artist back in Australia. And from then I kind of really became enamored with photographing musicians, and that's actually, even though I sort of work with actors a lot now, but I still work with musicians, and that was the first and only thing I did for a very long time, was shoot bands in Melbourne pubs in Australia and shoot CD covers. And I kind of did this mental check, and I didn't realize, you kind of forget over the years that because you sort of work with actors, and I realized I probably did like 40 or 50 album covers, over the years.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
When did you realize that this was going to be a career rather than just a hobby?
I think I did. I maintained my job for a very long time, and continued to work in the retail while going out on and
Sure.
doing shoots. Like most of us do. It's kind of like, even though I was getting paid for what I was doing as a photographer, it was still kind of like a side hustle and a bit of a hobby for
Yeah.
me, sort of. But I think it happened when I got my first actual proper editorial shoot, which was of Daniel Radcliffe, I think in 2004 or something like that, for the Harry Potter franchise. And I got paid something ridiculous at that stage. We're talking, early 2000s, and I think I got paid like 50 grand for a day's work, sort of thing. And I thought,
Wow.
okay, this is something I should pursue more seriously, and it's kind of like that thing where you've got to jump out of the comfort zone, like having the comfort of a job and your rent being paid and your bills being paid with a regular paycheck, versus okay, I got that job, that money will last me so long, but who knows when the next one will be. But
Right.
you have to get uncomfortable to move forward, and to make changes in your life, because comfort breeds laziness.
That's right. I think also, like, as an independent freelance person myself,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm always trying to say what is next and how do I
yeah,
connect I just did to the next part, and is there even a connection point?
yeah,
Because we don't advertise what we do. So it's kind of
yeah.
like
No,
our
no,
photographs, our images, or our videos. are all that people see, and they're like, "Oh, that's really cool what you do," and I'm
Yeah,
like, "Well, I could do that for you," and
yeah.
I sometimes didn't do that. So, when did you did you make a transition to the U.S. and was that like an automatic sort of ideal for you?
I think being in the US was always a dream for me, even as a kid. I always wanted to growing up. I always wanted to be an American.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
I really loved everything. Like, funnily enough, my first one of my first passions is actually aviation. You know,
Wow.
and and everything cool that came out of the world of aviation came from America. So my my
Yeah.
love my love for this country kind of was embedded with their aviation technology. And I always built the FX kits. When I was a kid of
Sure.
the B-51 Mustangs and the F-14 Tomcats and all that sort of stuff. So I was always passionate about this country, and as somebody from another part of the world, like the other hemisphere, right? Growing up, things are a little bit shaky now, but America was always looked as the leader and the moral leader of the world. So we always respected and loved the US. So that was just something that was always in my mind, like in my genetics from a young child. But then when I started seeing that all my sort of paychecks were coming from, after the first Harry Potter shoot, there were other shoots kept on coming and coming, and all my paychecks were coming from either Warner Brothers or New Line Cinema or Paramount. I thought, I think and I was struggling to get work in my own country and get paid and even recognized.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought I really felt then that I'm really in the wrong place. So that's I started making that move in the late, I don't know what you call them now, the noughts, where like 2008 ish.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
started coming I would work and save my money and then come here for the full 3 month allowable as a holiday visa, and
Sure.
just meet people, do free photo shoots, meet people, do free photo shoots. And funnily enough, that transition started with Vancouver. So I would go to Vancouver, spend
Yeah.
2 months in Vancouver, and then 1 month in LA or New York, and then slowly but surely it sort of got more and more time in LA, more and more time in LA, and then by the time I got to around 2013, 2014, I knew enough people in the industry that were willing to write me letters that would help me get my green card, and then I moved here full time in 2015.
Yeah. And tell me the progression of your career now being in LA and sort of the things that you've been able to shoot. I've been watching you. And first
Yeah,
of all, I think we do have a Vancouver connection, me being here,
yeah,
and that's why I started following you and
yeah,
maybe see some of your work. But I think the idea for all of us is,
yeah,
like me making it in New York, or in the U.S.
yeah,
And New York has been
yeah,
a great city for me. I've been doing some
yeah,
amazing work out there. But yeah, there's that American dream that we're all sort of craving. And tell me
yeah.
about the unfolding of your American dream through your process and through your work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one because it happens. I'm not a methodical person or a planner. I tend to
Yeah, me
sort
too.
of, I
We're
tend to
creative.
go the way
We're
I get.
creative. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's happened rather haphazardly, but I think just because I'm tend to be a people person, and I like people and I enjoy their stories. I think I just sort of made a lot of good friends in this town, and connection is the most important thing. Everything absolutely amazing that's ever going to happen to you is going to come from another human being. So
That's right. That is
people
right.
are important. People are the most important resource in the world. In
Yeah.
every way, yeah, from career to emotionally and intellectually, they're the most important resource. So I don't think enough people pay enough attention to the fact, or place enough importance to the fact, that the humans next to them can save their lives, and in many, many ways. And I think I just slowly started off basically just doing like headshots, especially in
Yeah.
Vancouver. and Toronto, and I think my style of work was a little bit different. It was a little bit more editorial, so people really liked what I was doing. That just had a slightly different flavor to it, and I think that came
Yeah.
from me just genuinely like not saying, okay, I got 10 headshots to do today, dollar signs, dollar signs. I would really seriously be interested in that person, and the shoots would just be fun.
Yeah.
And if you sort of delve into, most actors hate photography, unless they're photographers, they hate being photographed.
Sure.
And a lot, yeah, they really don't like doing it because, and the minute you're sort of semi-successful, like you're working regularly on shows and stuff like that, the photo session that you're doing is usually for publicity, and it's just no different to the interviews that you have, the 20 interviews you have to do a day, and blah, blah, blah. It's just another, thorn in the side of your day of stuff you have to do,
Right.
So that a lot of times, the bigger level actors that I would shoot would be forced into shoots with me by the publicists, so
Wow.
they'd be like, okay, you need new shots, you've been trading on this 10-year-old shot, got to get it done, and we like this guy's work, so you're going to go and shoot with Dennys. And the actors would turn up and go, oh, okay, let's get this, let's get the shot over and done with. It's like, and by the end of it, they would go, oh my God, that was the best time I've ever had in my life, or more important, no, that's probably overstating a bit, but that was actually really fun. They would say, I really enjoyed that. And then they would come back for more, sort of,
Creating an experience, creating an
yeah.
experience.
And that's how it built up slowly but surely. I started doing that, and then I just meet people through people, and I'd end up getting some magazine covers here and there, getting invited to TV shows mostly by producers, and directors. So I would do, my style, because I'd be invited onto a series by a director or a producer and not be the set photographer. I had, there was no sort of agenda forced upon me for the sort of shots I had to get for them. So I'd get my style of images on these great shows like Star Trek and
Yeah.
Longmire stuff, and we'd publish books of that work, and then with my business partner Ken, we developed a book publishing boutique book publishing company, and we've published like 5 or 6 books now.
Wow.
I love books more than anything, and the smell of paper, so I wanted to be part of the
Yeah.
solution of them not disappearing into the digital world, and not part of the problem, so we publish books, we love it, and it just went from there. And then I sort of started getting pulled back into the music industry again,
Yeah.
and working, and through my connections with Leica, who are an amazing company, they would send me on shoots with McLaren and Seal, and then I got to meet Alanis Morissette through a friend and became kind of her favorite photographer for many years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just I I can't give you a business plan, because there is no business plan. It's all about people. Be interested in the people. Be truly interested in the people around you,
Yeah.
and all else will come.
I myself have based my life on curiosity,
Yeah,
want to know more, and then seeking out people, and then magically they appear.
yeah,
And I mean, I'll use the word very it's a very current word, or I'm about talk about manifestation,
yes,
believing in magic, right?
yeah,
I'm a very spiritual person. I
yeah,
grew up in a very spiritual household,
yeah,
but didn't think that was a pragmatic, sort of like a practical way to think in life. My parents like, get your degree, go be an engineer, go do this, and none of that happened. And then
same,
suddenly,
same.
in the side of my head, I was a big dreamer. And
Yeah,
it was about 9 years ago I documented the Dalai Lama, and then I
yeah,
went
wow,
following year I got to work with Meryl Streep and all these fascinating humans. And I was
amazing.
like, this kid from Vancouver getting all
Yeah,
these opportunities. Because people used to ask me, are you from LA, New
yeah,
York,
yeah,
London? And
yeah,
I go, no, I live in Vancouver. And they're like, oh, that's
yeah,
really cool. And then
yeah.
suddenly, like, I got all these opportunities, but and I remain, I live here still, but I travel to do all this work. Did you know that being in LA was the place for you, that you said, okay, this is where I need to be to do this stuff?
Yeah, not necessarily. I learnt about LA slowly through the process of traveling here.
Mm.
All I knew was that I loved the US, and um, as I started, but I've always as a kid loved film and TV. I was a big Star Trek fan from the day we had television. Like I'm old enough that we had black and white TV.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same. Same, yeah.
So I've always loved film and TV, but the concept of actually being able to have anything to do with that industry in America was like dreaming about living on Mars. It
Yes.
was
Yeah.
it was so far away, and of course pre-internet and everything. We would have a movie come out in Australian cinemas a year after it was released in American
Oh,
cinemas.
yeah. Yeah. That's right.
So US and film and Hollywood was on another planet as far as we
Yeah.
were concerned. So that was just purely dream. That was fanciful. So for me, when I found myself, and on the set of Star Trek for the first time, that was like a mic drop moment for my life. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I can get hit by a truck now and I will die with a smile on my face.
That's
Um,
interesting.
and
That is. Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny that you say the spiritual thing too.
Yeah.
Growing up in that sort of family, because I had the same. European parents. They want you to do something that they can be proud of. So they want to say that their son is an engineer or a doctor and stuff. So I studied
Yeah.
civil
It's what they
engineering.
understand. It's what they
Yeah,
understand, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I went back to I met family in Croatia for the first time in my life.
Yeah. Wow.
Just last week. And
Wow.
I
Congratulations.
go
That's
back to find that one of my first cousins is a priest and the other one is a nun. So it's about as spiritual as your
that's deep
family.
spiritual.
Yeah,
That's deep
yeah.
spiritual.
And
Wow.
he's the
Wow.
coolest guy. I'm madly in love with both of those two family members, and they're just so fun and so amazing. So, but yeah, the concept of being here and doing this again as a creative person, you and I don't want to generalize this, but I'm a little bit ADD as well, so the there was no plan to do any of this or to end up here. It just was fly by the seat of your pants. I
Yeah.
just, I still do it every day. I'll wake up this morning and I'll be like, what the hell's going on? I live in Los Angeles. It's and I
How did I get
it's
here? Right.
yeah. How did I
Yeah.
get here? Yeah. And I've always loved downtown Los Angeles,
Sure.
and it's kind of been always because it's such a textural place. I love photographing in the streets. So when I moved here, I ended up in West Hollywood. I was lucky because a friend of mine ran the Ramada Hotel, and he really offered me a sweet deal. And all of a sudden, I'm in West Hollywood for 5 years. But I've never, growing, probably like grow up in a sort of a more of a normal environment, like a
Yeah.
suburbs.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
look, I was just like a fat bullied kid at school, in a country town.
Yeah.
The
Okay. Okay.
the concept of me being here and working with people that I'm working with is like,
Yeah.
it's still, I pinch myself. But I grew up in the country on a 10-acre sort of farmlet. And then in Melbourne, I lived in the city. Like I was one of the first residents to actually live in the middle of a
Wow.
business city. So I have this great passion and love for the quiet and the wilderness and going fishing. But I love the compressed nature of living in a busy city. I love New York and I love downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, it's and as I was saying, there was no sort of focused plan on how to get here, but all I knew was I don't know anything other than to work,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and work
And I love
hard.
but it's also a thing where people ask me, like, oh, like when people talk about work, they're like, oh, I gotta go to work. It's like a Sunday.
Yeah,
Like I gotta go
yeah,
tomorrow. I'm like, I can't wait to tell people what I'm up to or where I'm going
yeah,
to. I'm super excited about
yeah,
it. And it's also
yeah,
this idea that when you've mastered something, you've done it so many times and you really know what
mm,
you're doing. everything is just
Yeah.
sort of so natural. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like writing, it's like writing or drinking water. Like, it's
Yeah.
all sort of like embedded into you. And I wanted to ask you, is there along your path, um, me in my career, I meet people, like you said, I network, like, and I always feel like there's some type you'll know when that magic is about to happen where you're like, oh, we can do something. Were there people along the way that you recognize that could have helped you, that mentored you,
Yeah.
that you like who were some of those people in your path that sort of helped you along the way that stand out?
I think you know the I didn't really get mentored or taught in photography. So photography in particular, and my story is I kind of started off as a cinematographer,
Yeah,
or kind of did them dual. I didn't really in those days know anybody in the early days to get mentored. I didn't do what you should always do. I think is that if there's somebody whose work you respect, you can now, because we have social media, then you can reach out to people, you can find out the
sure.
context, and you can ask people, and you'll find people are very willing to help you out, as
Absolutely.
am I too. That wasn't so available in my younger day, but I think the two stories that I have that helped me and that inspired me were firstly the when I was working in the retail store, and this is why I always say, I've told this story a number of times, but always be interested in the people around you, And I had a regular customer who I met through two of the retail stores that I worked in. And I just liked her as a person. We would talk a lot, and I would give her a lot of discounts and extras, whenever she bought stuff. And she in turn would give me passes to movies, because she was like one of the lead publicists for Warner Brothers in Australia. And I would occasionally go to these red carpet sort of premieres of films. And when I bought my camera, I'd start taking pictures over the shoulder of actors, if they're signing autographs or whatever, or they're on the red carpet. But I would be there with them, you know what I mean, rather than
Wow.
be one of the
Yeah.
photojournalists behind or the paparazzi behind the barrier. So I would get these unique shots. And I just started sending them these photographs just as a gift, and and both her and her boss would like, well, we should just we should, hire him to do this for us, So while I was still working my regular job, I was going out and shooting, at parties, and, Wesley Snipes and Ryan Reynolds and stuff like that, So that's kind of how it started. And then my work started to, I started to learn how to capture people in their environment in a very beautiful natural state as well. And then from there, they started hiring me to shoot portraits within the press junkets. So, and then she's the one that actually ended up bringing me the Harry Potter gig, which was my first big show, And then from there, I met a director through circumstance who I really admired, and he had written and directed a film called Angel Baby, which is a very iconic Australian film, an amazing story, won a lot of awards. And
Cool.
he happened to be the main guy who guided the boat of the storyline of what Battlestar Galactica was. Right, so
Wow.
that
Cool.
that's Michael Reimer, right? He's a very
Yeah.
iconic director, and
That's right.
he, you know, sci-fi nerd. I mean, you could probably tell if you look over my shoulder. You got the
Yeah.
boys, you Q from Star Trek, you got a
Very
Ghostbusters.
cool. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
You got some cool
so
stuff there.
yeah,
That's rad.
I'm a geek. So he was in about to direct the final season of Battlestar Galactica, and he said, "Oh, you should come to set." I'm like, "What? Really?" And so I actually ended up going to Vancouver in
Yeah.
2008 onto the set of Battlestar Galactica, and it was really funny. I won't go into it in too much detail, but I was going through a bit of depression then, at
Wow.
2008. Even after all these big, I'd done my second or third, Harry Potter shoot, and the money just kept on getting
Sure.
exponentially bigger. But I was just feeling, there were a lot of personal things that were going on, and I literally decided to give up photography, right?
Yeah.
And just
Wow.
reset myself. And I'd literally written a list of all my cameras to put on eBay to sell everything, and he convinced me not to, and he said, uh, "Come to Canada, chill out. You can stay with us. You can stay in Deep
Nice.
Cove. You can
Wow.
stay in
Yeah.
Deep Cove. It's really
Man.
cool. And just wind down, reset yourself." And so I literally went out to there. I brought my cameras with me, and literally the first day on set, he started introducing me to everybody, and the first day. I met the first day I was there. I met Edward James Olmos, who went on to become a very, very
Yeah.
dear, and we collaborated on a lot of things since then. And he's the one that came up to me and said, in his raspy voice, he said, "Look, Roma tells me you're a photographer." I'm going, "Yeah, yeah." My voice is cracking like the Krusty Burger kid from The
Very real
Simpsons.
experience. Very real
Yeah,
experience.
and he
Yeah.
said, and he told me, these are the final 3 or 4 episodes. There are no set photographers. There's no crews allowed on set because it's the big reveal of the final 5. So it was a big secret. So nobody allowed on set. He said, "You've got to. It's up to you to document the
Wow.
last acts of this
Wow.
iconic
Very
series."
cool.
And I said,
Very cool.
"Okay, okay, yeah, if you say so." Um, and uh, and at the same time, you've got I think it's NBC ringing up the showrunner, saying, "Who the hell is this photographer on set?
Yeah.
It hasn't been cleared. Get him the f out of there."
Yeah.
So like literally security are coming up to me, and Edward James almost is saying nobody touches this guy, and everybody's backing off, right down to the
Wow.
execs. The execs at NBC is like, they're saying it's Eddie said it's okay, and they're like, okay, like nobody messes with Eddie.
Yeah. And it's nice to have
So,
those champions in your life, right?
yeah,
Because
so yeah,
those are the people that are going to help you stand out and actually
yeah,
create. You
absolutely. And
know,
Eddie's
yeah.
like that. He's a very, very kind, nurturing person, and we've been really good friends ever since, and some of my favorite, most iconic photographs that I've ever taken of an actor have been of him. And
Wow.
he of course, he's been in everything we love, but I've always loved him from the day I saw him in Blade Runner,
Yeah.
and even though
Yeah.
I think the statistic is in the entire span of the film he has no more than about 11 minutes of screen time, his role is so pivotal and so memorable in that movie. And for me, he was always my favorite. So again, another mic drop. To be able to work with him and to be able to call somebody like that your friend, for me,
Yeah.
is like, I feel so blessed. And we went on to work on in 2016, one of the most effective one of the most effective voting advertising campaigns in the history of this country, with the TV ads that I directed for him and the photographs that I did, which was designed to influence, well, not influence, but to educate that it's very important for everybody to vote,
Wow.
and we reached and affected tens of millions of people with the photographs that we had
Cool.
at bus stops all over the country. So Eddie as a champion, Michael Reimer was a great champion and believer in my work, and we shot one of the first cinema release DSLR movies with him, which won. He directed a film that I shot for him, which won over 40. It won every film festival award that you could possibly think of
Wow.
in 2011. So to get given those opportunities is a wonderful thing. You just have to be in a state that you're ready to accept them.
Yeah, it's like right, yeah, like knowing that it's good and just being able to just be like, thank you, being of
Yeah,
gratitude.
yeah.
What advice do you give to young creatives that are like, it's interesting. 20 years ago, I couldn't have had
Mm,
a career.
yeah.
I 2008, 2009, I used to walk around Vancouver with an iPad and interview people. And
Hmm.
then
Yeah,
my life progressed into some beautiful places. And it was
yeah,
only at when I turned 40, like
yeah.
in 2014, I'm like, oh, now I can have a career.
Yes.
Um, Today, everybody's creating. And
Yeah.
so it's more acceptable. What advice do you give to people? Or what advice do you have for people that are just starting to learn that this can be their profession? Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a tough one too. I think right now you have the greatest opportunities because the equipment is so cheap and so available to
Yes.
do great work. I don't like the word content,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's your ability, to do things. The equipment isn't a hamstring anymore. You're not hamstrung like I was. Like, okay, we want to shoot this movie. We need to find $50,000 to buy a camera. You know what I mean? Because there are no iPhones that shoot in
Yeah,
4K.
that's right. That's right. Exactly.
So it's a very different story now. So what makes you have to stand out is your creative. Oops. Your creative vision is the most important thing, because if I go back to the film that I shot in Face to Face, I mean, that film was literally shot in, on the first Canon camera that was capable of doing video, right?
Yeah.
And so it was probably shot in 1080p, and I was getting lambasted by the society, the filmmaking society, because I was taking such an important project for granted, and it should have been done with a proper crew and proper film, and it's going to look like crap. And so I was just getting slammed for that. In the meantime, we were shooting it this way because it was essentially a zero budget film that we shot in 12 days. That
Right.
really, it was like 12 Angry Men, so that footage needed to be sprayed by 3 cameras, and then everything sorted out by a great editor, Sasha. But that was the only way it could be done then, and the film got standing ovations, because it was about the story. Of course, it looked better if it was shot on a Panavision film camera.
Sure.
At $2 million, to for the camera, but we didn't do it that way. We did it the way that would propagate the story, because the story was so important and so compelling that it didn't need to be shot in any other way. So I think just really believe in what you're going to do, like the story you want to tell or the images you want to make. You just got to believe in them. And I think for me, if you doggedly believe in what you have, as whether it's a product or a creative story to tell, then nothing can really stop you. If you really believe in it, you just need sort of the opportunity, because there's a lot of static out there now, I guess, with with Instagram and with Facebook, and everybody's uploading things on YouTube. It's very hard
Right.
to find those gems, but I would just say, again, it goes back to what I said initially, is that people are the most important resource, so don't be shy about reaching out to people. You'd be surprised at how kind people very high in the industry can be, and how accommodating they can be, and don't be, believe in yourself,
Yeah.
when I and when people reach out to me, even via direct message on Instagram and things like that, I'll always talk to them. I'll always offer advice, and if I can, I'll take on people onto shoots just to give them that experience. Because being there in person really helps. But I remember when I met Joel Silver for the first time, um, and I was introduced to him, and I still kind of recoil a little bit. It's just that self-deprecating Australian thing.
Sure.
When people introduce you and they
Like
say
being
that,
Canadian. It's like being
yeah,
Canadian.
exactly, and you get introduced as a wonderful photographer, and
Absolutely.
all this
Yeah.
sort of stuff, and And I'm going, oh yeah, no, it's yeah. And I was kind of straight away. I went into, like this publicist introduced me to him, and she was going on about me. I was saying, oh, please stop me. And he was like, so you're not that good. And I said, well, I was sort of stumbling a bit. He said, listen, if you want to be in this country, he said, people in America they do love humility interlaced with talent, but nobody is a greater authority about you than you. So if you tell me you're crap, then I'm going to believe you.
That's right.
So you've got to believe in yourself is what I learned from
Beautiful.
that. Yeah. Just believe in yourself and reach out to people that you admire, and
Great
you may not get an answer, but you'd be surprised when you do, how often you do. So,
Thank you. I'm going to leave it there. I think that's very inspiring. I think, and I appreciate your time and talent.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for.
Oh, I appreciate it. And I think the future is about storytelling.
Absolutely.
When people have been talking about AI and all this other stuff, but the human story still remains really intact. And the personal experiences keep intact as well. And I'm so impressed by your journey, because I can see myself in it. I can see my work, how I've sort of lived my life, and there's no route. There's no like straight line to get to where I am. And I don't plan, people ask me, what is your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan? I go, my plan is to be alive, healthy, doing whatever I'm doing. And the dream for me is that I can continue doing this till the day that I'm gone, like this is my dream.
Absolutely. I think, you've just got to, and what you've said is really relevant, that we finish up on that, is that one thing you realize is that you are absolutely not alone. We all have very similar stories. We all go through tough times and through darkness and through light. And for my thing for people to take away from this is that I picked up my camera, when I photographed that musician for the first time. I was 40 years old. Right.
Yeah, me too. Oh, wow. So you and I are aligned. Oh, my goodness.
You know what I mean? So, and I always tell young people, if you really love photography or cinematography or music, I said, if one thing that I tend, I'm sort of scattered, like I lose focus. I said, just do that and nothing else. You can have a job and you can be studying to be a doctor. You can still go out and photograph every other day or every day and learn your skills. But if you're 16, 17, 18 years old and you just keep doing, imagine where you'll be when you're 40.
Wow.
When I started.
I think I came in the wrong time.
So
but timing is also when it's meant to be, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really appreciate your time and this conversation. I look forward to sharing your work with my audience world, and I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And sorry for my cluttered, nerdy background.
You're lovely. This is the creative process. If you've been looking around my office right now, I'm only showing the good stuff right now.
Yeah.